When India became independent on 15th of August 1947, it marked the end of many years of colonial rule. It also marked the beginning of political freedom and self-rule. But was the path ahead an easy one for India? Not really. With freedom came a new set of challenges. Some of them had to be addressed immediately, while others had to be addressed with a long-term vision. One of the biggest challenges faced by the country soon after partition was the problem of refugees. About 8 million people came to India as refugees from the newly formed Pakistan. This problem had to be tackled immediately as these refugees were homeless and jobless. They needed new homes and new jobs. Another immediate challenge came from the erstwhile princely states. Prior to independence, India was composed of about 500 princely states, each ruled by a Maharaja or Nawab. After independence, these princely states were to be integrated either with India or Pakistan. The question then arose, would they relinquish their power and join the newly formed nation? Or would they prefer their independence? The challenge lay in convincing them to join and make a single united nation. Newly independent India had to face certain challenges that could only be dealt with a long-term vision and plan. Those challenges pertained to unity and development. At the time of independence, India had a population of about 345 million. What was the nature of the Indian society then? Caste-based divisions continued to exist between upper castes and lower castes in India. Majority of Indians were Hindus, but there were people who practiced other religions and faiths. People in different parts of the country spoke different languages. The social composition of India was diverse with respect to social and cultural practices, professions, food habits, etc. The challenge thus lay in attempting unity in this diversity that made up the fabric of the nation. Development was another major challenge that new independent India had to deal with. A large number of people lived in villages and practiced agriculture for their living. Their lives and livelihood depended heavily on monsoons. Agriculture and monsoon were central to the survival of many non-farming service groups such as potters, weavers, carpenters, etc., because if the crops failed, they would not get paid for their services. Many people in cities lived in slums. They didn't have the benefits of education or healthcare. Poverty was prevalent in Indian villages and cities alike. In order to eradicate poverty, the newly independent nation had two tasks to perform. Firstly, productivity in the agricultural sector had to be increased. Secondly, new industries had to be promoted to ensure more job opportunities. Considering the seriousness of these challenges, what was the way ahead for India? Should we have given priority to the question of unity and dealt with development later? Or should we have gone ahead with development programs and considered the question of unity at a later stage? Let us imagine what would happen if we gave priority to the question of development over unity. It was possible that caste-based divisions would continue or perhaps get worse. The clashes between religious groups would grow more than ever. The divisions between people on the basis of cultures, languages, and practices would probably never heal. So the question of unity could not be postponed at all. Now let us consider if unity was given more importance and development ignored. It would create new divisions in the society, such as between the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots. cities and the countryside, developed regions and undeveloped regions, and so on. Therefore, India's approach to these challenges was one of giving equal importance. They had to go hand in hand so that existing divisions could be erased without creating new divisions. Identify one of the major challenges India faced at the time of independence that had to be resolved immediately. Excellent. Which of the following was a possible outcome of giving priority to development over unity in India after independence? Excellent. Now let us summarize the main points covered in this session.
A constitution is a set of rules that determines the form of government in a country or state, as well as the relationship between the citizens and the government. The constitution of a state outlines the objectives of the state and describes the rights and duties of its citizens. Let's take a look at how the Constitution of India was framed. The Indian Constitution was formed on the basis of a series of discussions held by a Constituent Assembly of nearly 300 Indians held over a period of 3 years from December 1946 to November 1949. The discussions were held in New Delhi while participants came from all parts of India and represented different political parties. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar headed the drafting committee that prepared the draft of the Constitution. Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, Rajendra Prasad, and Abul Kalam Azad also played an important role in drafting the Constitution. The Constituent Assembly took into account varied issues such as caste divisions in the Indian society, regional and communal concerns, size of the Indian population, illiteracy, and poverty in their discussions. The Indian Constitution came into effect on January 26, 1950, and is commemorated every year on the same day as Republic Day. The new Constitution stood for secular values. The Constitution of India begins with a preamble, which is an introduction to the Constitution. The Constitution adopted universal adult franchise. This meant that every Indian citizen above the age of 21 had the right to vote regardless of gender, class, or education. Note that today, the minimum age for voting has been lowered to 18 years. The Constitution guarantees equality before law to all citizens, irrespective of their financial status, caste, creed, and religion. The Constitution also offered certain privileges to the most disadvantaged groups in society, such as the people earlier referred to as untouchables or Harijans. The Indian Constitution refers to this group as scheduled castes. Another disadvantaged group granted privileges were the Adivasis, who had largely been denied basic health care and education facilities until then. The Constitution refers to this group as scheduled tribes. The Constituent Assembly also proposed that some seats in the legislatures and government jobs be reserved for members of the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. The division of power between the central and state governments was a matter of strong debate in the Constituent Assembly. The Constitution eventually established 3 lists of subjects to distribute the powers. The Union list included subjects such as taxes, defense, and foreign affairs. which were the exclusive responsibility of the centre. Issues such as health and education were on the state list and would be addressed at the state level. The concurrent list included subjects such as forest and agriculture, which would be the joint responsibility of the centre and state governments. For a country with innumerable languages and dialects, another issue debated in the Constituent Assembly was the selection of an official language. Some felt that freedom from British rule should also mean freedom from the English language. Others who represented the non-Hindi speaking provinces were opposed to Hindi being used for official purposes. After several discussions, Hindi was made the official language of India, while English was selected as the language of official communication across states. The Constitution of India thus established equality before law for all citizens of India. Yet, as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chairman of the drafting committee, pointed out, India had a long way to go before it could guarantee economic and social equality to its citizens. Think about this and discuss. The map of India has not always been the way we see it today. There was a time when the Indian subcontinent spanned across the present regions of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. During British rule in India, the Indian subcontinent was divided between princely states, highlighted here in pink, and British provinces, highlighted in yellow. In the year 1947, India gained independence from the British. Simultaneously, there was a partition of the Indian subcontinent into 3 countries: India, West Pakistan, and East Pakistan. Most of the princely states were integrated with either India or Pakistan. During this period, most princely states gradually crumbled, and the aim of the Indian National Congress was to build a single united nation. While the leaders of the Indian National Congress had earlier promised separate provinces for major linguistic groups, they now opposed this idea in favor of nationalism. Vallabhbhai Patel, the Deputy Prime Minister of independent India, said that the first and last need of India at the present moment is that it should be made a nation. Linguistic groups in the country were greatly disappointed. Kannada, Malayalam and Marathi speakers had looked forward to their own states, and hence they protested. The strongest protest came from the Telugu-speaking community. A veteran Gandhian called Potti Sriramulu undertook a fast, demanding a separate state for the Telugu-speaking community. His actions gathered a lot of public support. Potti Sriramulu lost his life on 15 December 1952, after 58 days of fasting. His death led to widespread protests, which eventually led to the formation of the state of Andhra Pradesh in 1953. The creation of Andhra led to demands for separate states from other linguistic communities. Hence, the central government constituted the States Reorganization Commission, which submitted a plan for linguistic reorganization of states in 1956. In the year 1960, the province of Bombay was divided to form the states of Gujarat for Gujarati speakers and Maharashtra for Marathi speakers. In 1966, The province of Punjab was split to form the states of Punjab for Punjabi speakers and Haryana and Himachal Pradesh for those who spoke Haryanvi and Hindi in addition to Punjabi. By 1975, most of the Indian states had taken shape. Take a look at the map and see the different states of India during this period. In the year 2000, 3 new states were carved out from the existing states. Uttarakhand was separated from the state of Uttar Pradesh. Jharkhand was carved out of Bihar and Chhattisgarh was carved out of Madhya Pradesh to suit the needs of local communities. Today, India has 28 states and 7 union territories, and further divisions are constantly being sought. Think about this and discuss.
As an independent nation, India had 2 key objectives of economic development. Firstly, lift India and its people out of poverty. Secondly, build a modern technical and industrial base to increase production and generate more jobs. With the aim of designing and executing economic policies that help fulfill these objectives, a planning commission was set up by the government in 1950. There already was a broad agreement on the model India would follow for its economic development. It was called the mixed economy model. In this model, both the state or the government and the private sector had important and complementary roles to play in owning, making, selling, and exchanging goods in an economy. The state and the private players would work together to accomplish 2 things. That is, increase production and provide more employment opportunities. In this context, the task of the Planning Commission was to define the role of both the state and the private sector, and to determine which industries would be initiated by the state and which by the private sector. An important consideration to be kept in mind was how to achieve a balance between the interests of the different regions and states while doing so. A great leap in this direction was the instituting of 5-year plans. What are 5-year plans? 5-year plans are a set of centralized and integrated economic programs designed and executed by the Planning Commission. The first 5-year plan, launched in 1951, focused on the primary sector, including agriculture. The second 5-year plan came into action in 1956, inaugurating an era of industrialization in India. It focused on developing heavy industries such as steel, coal, and in constructing large dams. The state was to be responsible for the development in these sectors. This increased focus on heavy industries had many supporters, as industries were considered the future of an economy. But it also met with heavy criticism from many, primarily on 3 counts: for not giving adequate emphasis on agriculture, for neglecting primary education, and for glossing over the environmental implications of economic policies. The foreign policy of independent India was developed by its first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. He was also the first Foreign Minister of independent India. The foundation of India's foreign policy was non-alignment. What is non-alignment, and why was this approach central to India's foreign policy? The answer to this question lies in the political climate of the world in the 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s. India became free shortly after the Second World War that lasted from 1939 to 1945. United Nations was formed in 1945 with the aim of promoting international cooperation. At around the same time, the power and ideological conflicts between the USA and the USSR were mounting, thus creating a Cold War in the 1950s and 60s. Both the USA and USSR were creating military alliances. Many countries in the world felt compelled to join either of these alliances. Moreover, a lot of countries were gaining freedom from their colonial rulers at that period. The non-aligned movement, led by India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, Indonesia's first president, Sukarno, Egypt's second president, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, and Yugoslavia's president, Joseph Tito, was founded in Belgrade in 1961. The movement advised countries around the world not to join either the USA or the USSR alliance, but to stay away from them. But did non-alignment mean remaining isolated or neutral without interfering in any world affairs? Not at all. Members of the non-aligned movement, especially India, actively mediated between the USA and the USSR alliances. Members of non-aligned movement took a moral and humanitarian stand against war and the race for arms. After over 5 decades, more and more countries have either joined the non-aligned movement or acquired observer status. NAM continues to work hard to spread peace and is attempting to promote an inclusive approach towards economic development in emerging nations. Did you know Jawaharlal Nehru, one of the founding fathers of NAM, was acknowledged as the greatest spokesperson for non-alignment of Afro-Asia nations? What was the objective of the non-aligned movement? The objective of What goals did the second 5-year plan not achieve, as per some critics? Excellent. Now let us summarize what we have learnt in this session.
India became an independent nation on 15th August 1947. Decades have passed since then. How well have we done as a free and democratic nation in these years? Have we succeeded in fulfilling the ideals and principles laid down in our constitution? Let us evaluate the journey of the nation since independence. Despite the numerous apprehensions held by foreign observers at the time India gained independence, India has continued to promote and foster the ideals of democracy. The belief that linguistic and regional divides would split the country and probably set up conditions apt for military rule have been proven incorrect. Contrary to all such predictions, not only does India remain united as a single nation, but has successfully conducted general elections at regular intervals at the national level. The 16th national election was held in 2014, besides hundreds of elections held at state and district levels. India has a free press and an independent judiciary. Most importantly, the diversity in the number of languages spoken, faiths observed, and cultures practiced have not adversely impacted India's unity. The Constitution clearly establishes equality for all citizens of the country. However, all is not good on this front. failure of independent India pertains mostly to the deep-rooted caste divisions prevalent in society. Take, for instance, the example of the Dalits or the backward classes. In spite of the constitutional principles on equality, they are still being discriminated against. Even in the 21st century, they are kept away from temples, parks and water sources in several parts of rural India. Besides divisions along the lines of caste, there exist divisions along class lines too. Though the pace of economic development has picked up, the benefits of it remain limited to certain segments of society, hence the divide between the rich and the poor has widened. This has resulted in some people living in posh houses, enjoying expensive vacations, and their children studying in expensive private schools. On the other hand, a large number of people who are below the poverty line. They live in slums without basic amenities, and some are even denied the basic right of education. Despite the fact that India has adopted the ideals of secularism, clashes between different religious groups have occurred in some states. Thus, one can conclude that by the standards that the nation set for itself at the time of independence has produced mixed results of success and failure. In 1956, Sri Lankan Parliament made Sinhala the sole official language of the country. This meant Sinhala was the medium of instruction in schools and colleges, in public examinations, and in the courts. This was strongly opposed by the Tamil-speaking minority in northern Sri Lanka, but the government did not make any amends in its language policy. The imposition of Sinhala on Tamil-speaking minority gave rise to a civil war, which has been going on for several decades now. Thus, the language policy introduced to unite people challenged the very unity of the country. Something similar happened in Pakistan. After independence, Urdu was made the official language. Urdu as the official language of Pakistan worked in West Pakistan but not in East Pakistan, where Bangla was the prominent mode of communication. With the new law, the people of East Bengal felt that their language was being suppressed. This created a rift between Urdu speakers and the Bengali speakers of the country. After independence, the states in India were reorganized on the basis of language. Many, including leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, thought this would disrupt the unity of the country. However, their fears were allayed as India adopted a policy of accommodation in its language policy. It declared Hindi as the official language, English as the language of communication, and simultaneously gave recognition to 22 regional languages. Non-imposition of an official language and the importance given to regional languages has helped maintain unity in the nation. Why did the language policies adopted in Sri Lanka and Pakistan fail? Excellent. Which of the following is not true about India's language policy? Excellent. English. In which of the following spheres has the Indian democracy failed? Excellent. Let's summarize what we have learned in this session.